Here with me to discuss nuclear weapons is the General Secretary for the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, Sophie Bolt. Sophie Bolt, morning to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
In 2025, did you think you'd still be having this fight to tell the world just how dangerous nuclear weapons can be?
Yeah, no, it's terrible that we are in this situation, and as you say, the threat of nuclear war, catastrophically, has never been higher since the Cold War. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. So I think it's really critical that we use this anniversary as an opportunity to really look at the human cost of nuclear war, but also the horrific realities of nuclear weapons, and why we need to make sure that these horrific bombings never happen again.
I mean, the argument for them is that they act as a deterrent. Of course, during the Cold War, we had this mutually assured destruction, this mad policy that meant that neither side would use one because they knew that the other side would destroy them. Does that argument still hold up, that they are a deterrent? Because the argument could be made, has been made, that if Ukraine had nuclear weapons, Russia would never have invaded.
Well, I think that argument's never held up, that it's a deterrent. You know, the idea that nuclear weapons have kept the peace. We've had, many horrific wars as we've had nuclear weapons, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, millions of people have died. And nuclear weapons has not kept the world safe. It's not brought peace. And in fact, it's the opposite. Having nuclear weapons means that the threat of those weapons being used is always there. And of course, these weapons are so incredibly destructive that they could wipe out the entire planet. And as you say, they're so much more powerful now. Now we have a situation where we have US nuclear weapons based in Britain, just in Lakenheath. They are 3 times more powerful than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. That could kill 600,000 people, just one bomb. And those, they are now here in Britain. We just have known that, a few weeks ago now.
Now, I mean, many nations have these weapons. As I said, there is the argument that's made that they act as a deterrent. They could have acted as a deterrent. What do you make of the reporting that more countries are now trying to get them? Obviously, India and Pakistan came to blows recently. They're both nuclear-armed nations, but it's reported that Germany are considering getting nuclear weapons, South Korea. It's even reported that Japan are thinking about getting nuclear weapons. Yeah,
this is absolutely terrifying, isn't it? The idea that we're going to be having even more nuclear weapons. We're going in completely the wrong direction, and we need to be stepping back from that. And I think part of the issue why we're seeing more countries consider getting nuclear weapons is because those that have their nuclear weapons are not abiding by their disarmament obligations. Most of those nuclear weapon states have signed up to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and part of that is that they are supposed to take steps in good faith to disarm their nuclear weapons, but they're not. Yeah, they are increasing those nuclear weapons, and they are also threatening countries. They're threatening to use their nuclear weapons against countries that don't have them. Yeah, you look at the situation with Iran, where Israel and the US illegally bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, absolutely kind of catastrophic situation there. And the concern is that Iran, which is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, had been, historically, allowing International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors in to look at its facilities to try and reassure Israel and the US that it was not developing nuclear weapons. The real concern is that this type of action is going to, push Iran towards developing nuclear weapons. And if that happens, we know, Saudi Arabia would want to, so really what we've got to be getting back to is looking at making our nuclear weapon states abide by those international obligations. And that's a key issue for all of us to get our heads around.
Well, Russia has just pulled out of a treaty on short and medium-range nuclear weapons. The United States pulled out of the same treaty back in 2019, so quite a while under Trump again. Yeah. Just finally, and on a more philosophical point of this, we were trying to discuss before we ran out of time, when I was growing up, there were loads of films about nuclear war. There were loads of programmes, lots of books. There were lots in the culture about the dangers and fears of it. Do you feel like some of that has been lost and there is a generation of people that perhaps haven't seen that and had that fear hanging over them?
No, I think it's the opposite now. You know, I think it's really coming back into our kind of wider mainstream culture, like Oppenheimer. You know, there are amazing books, you know, like A Nuclear War Scenario by Annie Jacobson, you know, which really show the horror of a nuclear war. So I think, and also young people totally get the situation that we face. They understand how serious the threat of nuclear war is.
But was there a period where perhaps it was a bit forgotten about because it seemed so distant, right?
Yeah. But I think, you know, the situation in Ukraine, and I think increasingly the horrors that we're seeing in the Middle East, you know, people are waking up and saying, this is a really, really dangerous situation. And we're finding, you know, in CND, you know, we are getting lots of new members because people are furious. They are furious with our political leaders who are not providing the leadership that they should be, you know, which is completely pushing us in the wrong direction. You know, Keir Starmer's massive war drive, this huge increase in military spending, and now announcing that they're going to be buying these nuclear-capable jets from the United States.
F-35.
That's right, yeah. So it now means that Britain will be able to launch nuclear bombs from submarines as well as from jets. So it's doubling, you know, its delivery capability. This is really, really dangerous, serious escalation. It's completely wrong direction. These weapons do not keep us safe. They will be putting us on the nuclear front line, and they are making us poorer. You know, we know that the huge hundreds of billions of pounds going into this means that we're going to be having continued terrible cuts to essential public services like hospitals, schools. So there's got to be a change in direction, and the majority of people understand that.